Millionaires have actively been selling Kaspa for a while now, and me saying this might lead you to think that Kaspa is doomed, but before you make that assumption, just hear me out. So if we go over to kaspalytics.com and go to the buy bucket Kaspa and watch the addresses that are holding between 10 million Kaspa and 100 million Kaspa, we can see that it has severely dropped in the past time or so. So what does this mean? It means that the wallets that have 10 to 100 million Kaspa are sending it somewhere else. So if we watch here, many of the wallets started sending their Kaspa somewhere at the 4th of December or the 5th of December. And then if we go and look at the exchange holdings, the amount of Kaspa that is currently being held on exchanges, and go look at the 5th of December, we can see that there was this huge spike up that people were sending Kaspa to the exchanges, and this lines up with the millionaires sending Kaspa somewhere, so they were most likely sending it to exchanges to sell the Kaspa. And the interesting thing here is that if we go down to the lower amounts of Kaspa, like 1,000 to 10,000 Kaspa held, then we can see that the amount of addresses that have this amount of Kaspa is basically stagnant for the past couple of weeks. And when I saw this, it instantly put me off, because usually the big ballers and the millionaires are selling when price is rising and buying when price is dropping. And if we look back at the Kaspalytics chart, we can see that at least some of the millionaire wallets sold at the top, but also a lot of them started offloading at these lows, which I think is interesting. But anyways, Kaspa are still holding these lows very well, and if you've watched my channel before, maybe you've heard me talking about the accumulation range. Now, I'm not a professional, I'm definitely not, but that's how I like to see it, because every time that we see the price of Kaspa dip down to this like 8 to 13 cent box, or maybe 10 to 13 cent box, we can see that price has basically always reversed to the upside to then later offload potentially the Kaspa that was bought in the accumulation range. And the fact that the price of Kaspa is still holding at these price lows makes me want to believe that a very healthy distribution of the Kaspa holdings is happening at a large scale. What I mean is that the big wallets are selling their Kaspa so that more people can buy smaller increments of those large amount of Kaspa, creating more Kaspa holders with less Kaspa holdings by each person. And really, when you start to think about it, it's much better to have this redistribution at these price points rather than having it at $1 or higher price points than this. We want the whales to be selling some of the Kaspa to redistribute, so the allocation of Kaspa is more evenly spread across all of its holders. Because ultimately we're on a long mission for adoption for Kaspa, so people start using it. If we look on Kaspalytics and look at the average transactions made daily on the Kaspa network, we can see that it's roughly around 100,000 transactions, 100,000 transactions per day. And if we were to look at the average transaction per second, it would be roughly 1.5 transactions that are being made on the Kaspa network every second. And the hash rate is around 1.2, 1.3 exahash. So all of these statistics show that the network is somewhat being used and the hash rate is still relatively high. So the network is being used and the network is secure. There's really nothing to be worried about. We just need time and patience to keep those daily transactions rise slowly day by day, and also the hash rate to keep the network secure. Everything doesn't need to happen overnight. It is a slow and gradual process, but hopefully we'll eventually get there if we keep spreading the word about Kaspa. Because another aspect that I really like about Kaspa is that the team is still very dedicated to Kaspa and developing Kaspa to something truly great. For example, we have a bunch of good upgrades coming in the future, and in the near future there's the Crescendo upgrade, which is the 10 blocks per second upgrade, and that just shows that the developers are still dedicated to the project. And the thing is that, as many of you probably know, Kaspa was fair launched, so there aren't any pre-allocated portion of the supply that is meant for marketing. It is up for the community, you and I and everyone else who owns Kaspa, to spread the word about Kaspa, to keep the community thriving and positive and cheerful regarding Kaspa, and just spreading the word about it, really. Because ultimately what Kaspa set out to be is to be the real version of Satoshi's vision. So a cryptocurrency that you actually can use for everyday transaction and trade, and it can also be used by a large amount of people at the same time, and it's highly effective, it's fast, and eventually you'll also be able to deploy smart contracts on the network. It literally does everything. So Kaspa is set to target a big problem, and even though the technology is very good and great and stuff, it won't get the recognition it deserves overnight. It most likely will be a gradual change, and how long that change will take, that is up to the crystal ball to decide. But in my opinion, Kaspa literally ticks all the boxes when it comes to a cryptocurrency that I myself would like to invest in, but also support the project itself. Like, it is fair launched, it has probably the best team in all of crypto world, and it's still at a relatively low market cap. It solves the blockchain trilemma by being scalable, secure, and decentralized, truly ticking all the boxes of scalable, decentralized, and secure at the same time. I think it's a blue chip crypto, and that's why I keep buying Kaspa. But when talking about the price of Kaspa and trying to figure out when it will boom or when it will go to the upside, we need to look at what could drive the price to the upside. What could be some potential catalysts that could thrive the upside move for Kaspa? And we actually have a couple of potential events that could create such an event. And the first would be either a Binance or a Coinbase listing. And it wouldn't be unreasonable to see Kaspa being listed on either of those exchanges, in my opinion, because Kaspa is being very heavily traded on some of the other exchanges, and especially in the recent weeks, if you look at the volume by Kaspa traded, you can see that it has severely risen in the past couple of weeks when you compare it to the other months, which in my opinion shows that there is something going on behind the scenes, or at least something is happening. Kaspa is swapping hands, and some important person or persons, plural, are picking up a lot of Kaspa. But anyways, I think that Binance will list Kaspa before Coinbase, and I'll talk more about that later on. And the second catalyst that could drive Kaspa's price to the upside could be the Crescendo upgrade, which I talked about before, the 10 blocks per second, and also the smart contracts being integrated. And this potential catalyst, the Crescendo upgrade, will probably most likely be very good for long time adoption as well, because when smart contracts are available on the Kaspa network, that will hopefully attract new developers to start developing on the Kaspa system, and hopefully it will lead to a ecosystem of developers kind of like the one with Ethereum, and that would be very good for Kaspa, because that would bring some actual real-life use case other than being a type of digital cash, which could help speed up the adoption of Kaspa and also help generate more transaction fees to eventually pay miners once the block reduction has gone so far that the rewards are basically non-existing for mining a block. And the third catalyst that really could drive the price of Kaspa upwards could be Grayscale announcing that they are starting to buy Kaspa, because Kaspa is on Grayscale's list of assets of interest or something like that it's called. So that would also be huge. And those were all of the catalysts that I could think of right now. If you have any other catalysts that you believe could be huge for Kaspa, please drop them down below. I'd love to read the comment. But always remember that even how great the technology might be, and even how great Kaspa is, it can fail. But I think it's highly unlikely, because I stated before, Kaspa was fair launched, which means that there's not a single entity holding too much Kaspa. Now, there are whales, of course, but there's still not that one entity. For example, if we look with Solana, a bunch of the supply is held by the initial investors and stuff. So what I'm trying to say is that the risk to reward ratio with Kaspa is severely greater than a lot of the other cryptocurrencies on the market. Like, Kaspa is only at a market cap of $3 billion, and there, as stated, are no big holders of Kaspa that hold the majority of the supply, and it has this great technology. It has the narrative of being the Bitcoin version 2, or the silver representative to the gold Bitcoin, and those narratives alone and the fact that Kaspa is fair launched with no big holders makes Kaspa, in my opinion, a very good risk to reward ratio play. Now, always remember, invest accordingly, don't invest more than you can afford to lose, and this is not financial advice. Now, before I continue on with the video, I just want to tell you a bit about the Tangem hardware wallet, which is actually the cryptocurrency wallet that I'm using to store all of my cryptocurrencies safely away from hackers, and it's also actually one of the first crypto hardware wallets that started supporting Kaspa early on. So whenever I want to send some cryptocurrencies out from the wallet, I'm using this card to scan it with my phone, which like authenticates the transaction and sends the transaction. So without the card, I cannot send the cryptocurrencies out of my wallet. It's kind of like a key. It's your private key. And the thing I personally like with Tangem is that I basically buy my Kaspa on Tangem. I send USDC or USDT over to my Tangem wallet, and then I use the swapping function inside of Tangem to swap it into Kaspa. So in conclusion, millionaires have been leaving Kaspa, but it's only like 30 people or 30 wallets, and these wallets seem to be sort of like trader wallets or trading millionaires, so it wouldn't be unreasonable to see some of their capital re-enter Kaspa in an upcoming future. I think that the biggest risks for Kaspa are market distractions and short-terminism. For example, if the focus were to shift onto another cryptocurrency, or if the entire Kaspa community were to give up on Kaspa. But I think that Kaspa is too unique to have such an event where the entire community just leaves. So, as we discussed, one huge catalyst that could drive Kaspa's price to the upside could be a Binance listing, and I actually made a video where I'm talking exactly about when it's reasonable to see Kaspa listed on Binance. So if you want to watch that video, you can click right here. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.